Yes, hello. I'm here with Ian, and we're going to talk about the myth of Narcissus. Specifically, we'll read Thomas Bulfinch's version of Echo and Narcissus, and then we'll kind of bring in authors, thinkers that have kind of been relevant to this that we like. About psychological development and attachment theory, little John Vervaeke, and maybe some Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So here's the myth of Narcissus and Echo.
Sounds sounds good. Uh, Echo was a beautiful nymph, fond of the woods and hills, where she devoted herself to woodland sports. She was a favorite of Diana and attended her in the chase, but Echo had one failing. She was fond of talking, and whether in chat or argument, would have to have the last word. One day, Juno was seeking her husband, who she had reason to fear was amusing himself among the nymphs. Echo, by her talk, contrived to detain the goddess till the nymphs had made their escape. When Juno discovered this, she passed a sentence upon Echo in these words: "You shall forfeit the use of that tongue with which you have cheated me, except for one purpose that you are so fond of, reply. You shall still have the last word, but no power to speak first." Jealous Juno. uh, Later, this nymph Echo sees Narcissus, a beautiful youth, as he's pursuing his own chase out through the mountains. Hunting, having a wander, who knows.
Hmm.
She falls in love with him and follows in his footsteps. Oh, how she longed to address him in the softest accents and win him to conversation, but it was not in her power. She waited and waited with impatience for him to speak first, and she had her answer ready. One day, the youth was separated from his companions and shouted out aloud, "Who's here?" To which Echo replied, "Here." Narcissus looked around, but seeing no one, called out, "Come." And Echo answered, "Come." As no one came, Narcissus called again, "Why do you shun me?" And Echo asked the same question. "Let us join one another," said the youth. And the maid answered with all her heart in the same words, and hastened to the spot, ready to throw her arms around his neck. He started back and exclaimed, "Hands off! I would rather die than you should have me." "Have me," she said, but it was all in vain.
Hmm.
He left her, and she went to hide her blushes in the recesses of the woods, and from that time forth she only lived in caves and among cliffs. Her form faded with her grief, till at last all her flesh shrank away. Her bones were changed to rocks, and there was nothing left but her voice. With
Hmm.
that, she's still ready to reply to anyone who calls to her, and keeps up her old habit of having the last word, which we now call echoes. Narcissus's cruelty in this case was not the only instance. He shunned all the rest of the he shunned all the rest of the nymphs as he had done poor Echo. One day, a maiden who had in vain endeavored to attract him uttered a prayer that he might some time or other feel what it was to love and meet no return of affection. The avenging goddess heard and granted the prayer. I believe that was Nike, the goddess of
Hmm.
vengeance.
Hmm.
Or no, Nemesis, maybe the goddess of vengeance. I'm
Hmm.
forgetting. This is the Roman version of the deities, and I am
Hmm.
not as familiar with them.
Hmm.
In any case, Narcissus gets cursed by this goddess. Uh, and there was a clear fountain with water like silver, to which the shepherds never drove their flocks, nor the mountain goats resorted, nor any of the beasts of the forest. Neither was it defaced with fallen leaves or branches, but the grass grew fresh around it, and the rocks sheltered it from the sun. Hither came one day the youth, fatigued with hunting, heated and thirsty. He stooped down to drink, and saw his own image in the water. He thought it was some beautiful water spirit living in the fountain. He stood gazing with admiration at those bright eyes, the locks that curled like the locks of Bacchus or Apollo, the rounded cheeks, the ivory neck, the parted lips, and the glow of health and exercise over all, and he fell in love with himself. He brought his lips near to take a kiss, plunged his arms in to embrace the beloved object, but it fled at his touch, and would only return after a moment when he had withdrawn, and it would renew his fascination. He could not tear himself away. He lost all thought of food or rest while he hovered over the brink of the fountain, gazing upon his own image. He talked with this supposed spirit. Why, beautiful being, do you shun me? Surely my face is not one to repel you. The nymphs love me, and you yourself look not indifferently upon me. When I stretch forth my arms, you do the same, and you smile upon me and answer my beckonings with the like. His tears fell into the water and disturbed the image. As he saw it depart, he exclaimed, Stay, I entreat you, let me at least gaze upon you, if I may not touch you. With this, and much more of the same, he cherished the flame that consumed him, and so by degrees he lost his color, his vigor, and the beauty which formerly had so charmed the nymph Echo. She kept near him, however, and when he exclaimed, Alas, alas, she answered him with the same words. He pined away and died, and even when his shade passed over the Stygian river, it leaned over the boat to catch a look of itself in the waters. The nymphs mourned for him, especially the water nymphs, and when they smote their breasts, Echo smote hers also. They prepared a funeral pyre and would have burned the body, but it was nowhere to be found. In its place, a flower, purple within and surrounded with white leaves, which bears the name and preserves the memory of Narcissus. That's pretty much the end of the myth. Bulfinch goes on to allude to John Milton's some of John Milton's poems, one called Comus, which I'm unfamiliar with, but where he tells the tale of Echo and Narcissus. Suppose I could read that. A little poetry as well. Sweet Echo, sweetest nymph that livest unseen within thy airy shell, by slow meanders margent green, and in the violet embroidered vale, where the love-lorn nightingale nightly to thee her sad song mourneth well. Canst thou not tell me of a gentle pair that likest thy Narcissus are? Oh, if thou have hid them in some flowery cave, tell me but where. Sweet queen of parley, daughter of the sphere, so mayest thou be translated to the skies and give resounding grace to all heaven's harmonies. So we've got Milton sort of um, mentioning Narcissus as the flower, but sort of calling upon the spirit of Echo and honoring her sort of suffering at his hands. Um, and then we have Bulfinch mentions Paradise Lost, also by Milton, and there's an echo in Eve's first sight of herself that Bulfinch implies that Milton is sort of tying that into the Narcissus reflection myth as well. So we'll read that, and then I think we can start our discussion. So this is from Paradise Lost, Book 4. That day I oft remembered when from sleep I first awakened and found myself reposed under a shade of flowers, much wondering where and what I was, whence thither brought, and how. Not distant far from thence a murmuring sound of waters issued from a cave and spread into a liquid plain, then stood, unmoved, pure as the expanse of heaven. I thither went, with unexperienced thought, and laid me down on the green bank to look into the clear, smooth lake that to me seemed another sky. As I bent down to look, just opposite, a shape within the watery gleam appeared, bending to look at me. I started back. It started back, but pleased I soon returned. Pleased it returned as soon with answering looks of sympathy and love. There had I fixed mine eyes till now, and pined with vain desire, had not a voice thus warned me, what there thou seest, fair creature, is thyself. And I think there is a mirroring, unintended pun, but there is a mirroring between Milton's description of the water and Bulfinch's description of the water that is very interesting. But we'll get into that in a moment.
Oh, okay.
Or we can get into it now, but that's kind of one of the things that stood out to me and why I found the Bulfinch's version so appealing. Just I feel like it really does call up some core bit of the Narcissus myth that can get missed if you're just focused on on the vanity issue of it, because it, with
Mm,
as with all myths, dreams, fairy tales, it works on multiple levels. So
mm.
you can give it this meaning, you can give it this meaning, you can give it this meaning, and to really bring the story to life, you want to be able to kind of feel it on all different levels.
Yeah,
So
yeah, very well told. What
thanks. Thanks.
were you thinking of in terms of the pool into which Narcissus gazed and in the Milton, what Eve looked at? Were you thinking of the unnatural perfectionism of the pool?
Well, I was thinking, so they're both described as sort of a purity.
Mm,
Um, Clear fountain, this is from Bulfinch. Clear fountain, water like silver. There's no sheep, there's no goats, nobody's like muddying the water.
mm,
But it's got grass growing around it and the rocks are sheltering it. So it has this very like sort of hidden centralized thing.
mm,
And with Eve, all of a sudden, waters issue from a cave and spread into a liquid plain and stand unmoving, pure as the expanse of heaven. So in both cases, it's creating, like with Bulfinch, it's this protected pool, and in Milton, it's coming from somewhere unknown, somewhere underground,
mm,
and spreading out into this sort of mirrored expanse. And I think, to my mind, they're both sort of describing the nature of mind,
mm,
the way that mind will create reflections of reality,
mm,
as concepts or as even just our experience. This is me sort of drawing on my Buddhist education, my personal Buddhist explorations. Nothing official.
mm,
But the nature of mind as a mirror is is common in Buddhism, is common in the West as well.
mm,
There is nothing in the mind of its own. It simply holds the image of whatever it is that enters. So
mm,
whether it's, the screen in front of you, me, us, I look out the window, I can see a tree, like my mind holds the image of the tree, and
mm,
then I can sort of, I don't know. You could say I'm looking at the tree, that I can focus on the image of the tree, the thought of the tree in my mind. You can also have a sense of like the actual incoming image of the tree is already being represented in my mind, sort
mm,
of psychologically or not psychologically, neurologically speaking, because
mm,
the tree's there. Scientifically, the light's coming off the tree. It's the waves of light that come hit
mm,
my eye translates that into an experience in my brain that my brain represents to my consciousness somehow,
mm,
that there is a tree there. So the experience I'm having is not the actual tree. It's the image of the tree projected onto the back of my eye, turned into information and fed into my brain, which at some point then I'm aware of that, right?
mm,
So there's this mirroring element of the mind. And in both of these cases, you have a person who is caught in the image of themselves.
mm,
And Eve is warned by some voice. I don't know my Paradise Lost well enough to know what happens next, but the voice says, what you see is yourself." And it's like, oh, that's me. Narcissus, nobody explains that to him, and he ends up sort of dying,
mm,
enamored by this thing. But to me, there's this way that I think we all, and especially with Eve, like tying it back to the Garden of Eden and original sin, and the thing that sort of breaks us away from our innocence that was shared with the animals and nature and all that the garden kind of represents, is self-awareness. It is, we are aware of ourselves as beings in the world. We are aware that we're going to die at some point. Animals may or may not, we're not quite sure, but they seem less concerned about such things as we do. And I feel like there's a danger of having this image of ourselves, mistaking it for our actual self,
mm. Yeah,
and trying to perfect that image at the
yeah,
cost of, as with Narcissus, food, water, movement, like all the things that brought him life and made him beautiful. He abandoned them to try and perfect
yeah,
this image.
yeah.
And I think that's, to me, that's sort of what the core of the myth is pointing towards. That we do not know. We have this sort of mirror of our mind, and there's a sharpness of awareness there that seems solely human. Who can say for sure, but we don't have anybody else that we can talk to about it.
Mm.
Um, that seems to be as intelligent and as building and as aware of things as we are. But when we turn it on ourselves, we don't quite know what to do with it, I think. Or there's a way in which we are still trying to work something out about how this reflecting mind interacts with our with what we think of as ourself. And we can get caught sort of staring at that reflection and trying to perfect it at the cost of everything else in our life or in our world. And if we're talking about narcissism as a social thing, um, I would go so far as to say like this is a pretty good reflecting mirror,
Yeah,
you
you're
know?
holding up your phone for the
Yep.
listeners.
Oh yeah, for the listeners,
Yeah.
yes. Apologies. Yeah, the phone, the dark mirror, the thing that shows us everything in human history broken down into digestible content that we can then try and build ourselves out of. And
Yeah.
yet we already are. Why do we need reflection? Why do we need to build ourselves? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's something deep there, but that's just me trying to scratch the surface of it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there is so much there that we can talk about. I mean, one thing you said a pool or a reflection, Bulfinch's makes clear that it's ultra clear, like I think he says it's something like silver or something like that. And yeah, that as a metaphor for the mind sounds really good and taken with the fact of both Milton and Bulfinch, or when someone goes up to that mirror, they think what they see is real, and that seems to say something about the mind too. We tend to, just like the just born Eve in Milton's version, we tend to take everything at face value, and I'm angry, and that means someone else is wrong, and I'm right, and et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that seems like a very fruitful way to look at these stories.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think like that's such a nice stepping stone that you laid out there of like being angry and thinking that, oh, because I'm angry, somebody is wrong and I am right. Um, you are central in doing that, you're centralizing onto your own opinion. You're identifying
Mm,
your own opinion, which feels true to you and is true to
mm,
you because it's what you believe, but you're so focused on that in a narcissistic kind of way
mm.
that you're not even seeing what the other person is actually experiencing, what their truth
Yeah,
is, where they're getting their data from. Oh, maybe they're seeing something I'm not seeing. Maybe I'm seeing something they're not seeing.
yeah.
We're both pulling from the same reality. Theoretically, we should have the same data. The fact that we
Mm,
don't, communication can help us to exchange information in a way that can move us beyond that conflict. But I think one of the other elements I want to weave into this discussion is healthy narcissism. I know I have friends who have some young kids. They have a 3-year-old little girl and a set of twins who are about 8, 9 months old at this point. So I've been watching these kids grow up, and the 3-year-old especially is going through a very narcissistic phase. And I think anybody who has kids or is around kids is familiar with the like, no, it's mine. No,
mm,
I want this. No, and then the tantrum when you don't get it. And obviously we want kids to be socialized. We want them to be able to share and learn why that's important and all of that. But I think there is an element of neurological development or psychological development or development of the personality where you come into the world and you're not even as an infant, you don't really know what's going on. You don't have words. You're not clear what you are, what something else is, how this whole thing works. And the mind is sort of develops itself out of that sort of infant state. And while doing so, at some point, the mind starts doing this narcissist thing, which is described well in Eve of like, oh, look at this thing. What is this thing? Oh, it's me. Oh, what is me? Oh, I want things. I want things the world doesn't want things that I want because I want that thing, but I can't have it. Why does this drive in me not why like I have this drive to move my hands. I can move my hands. Oh, I want this thing. I can grab this thing. Oh, now something's trying to take this thing away from me, or this other child is hitting me because I took its toy. But I wanted it. And so something else outside of me wants something.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? And as
Mm-hmm.
children, as infants and stuff, you have to make sense of that without words, without being able to have somebody come in and, okay, well, here what it is, kid, like one, two, three, and this is how you can't theorize to a child. They won't even listen to you if they are speaking. They can't be
Mm-hmm.
bothered. It's like it's a much deeper process. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say, like, ideally, the parents and the society can kind of guide a child through that growth period, but I don't think it often works well, and we will sort of get wounded or this is like basic attachment theory, attachment trauma. You can be sort of um, wired more towards connection and less towards expression, so that you're much more interested in the other, and you kind of lose yourself because yourself is dangerous to the connection process. Or you can sort of want to distance yourself from others in order to have yourself. So it's sort of like the anxious attachment and the fearful attachment. Anxious wants to get closer because there's some uncertainty inside, and the fearful attachment, hoping I'm getting these words right.
Mm-hmm.
The avoidant attachment, that's what it is, anxious and avoidant. And the avoidant will kind of want to pull back to try and figure themselves out apart from the other person.
Mm-hmm.
But in both cases, it's sort of a misalignment between, like, oh, well, I want things, I have desires, or I have emotions, I have feelings, I have an interior life that is not shared by the world around me. It's not, when I'm angry, maybe other people can tell that I'm angry, but they don't have the whole story of my anger, and I have to try and communicate to them, and that's really hard to do. So, like, and knowing that you're angry, knowing what's going on for you is a kind of narcissism. It is that self-reflection. But if you get so caught up in that you only want what you want and nobody else really exists for you, then that's narcissism in the clinical definition of, the problematic way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and yeah, that's what I see happening in Bulfinch with Narcissus, because Echo comes to him and says, "I love you." And he's like, "No, get away from me. I don't want anything to do with you." And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a real person there who is an other, who he will have to deal with being different than himself. And he can't even manage that. But once he finds the reflection where it's like, "Oh, you mirror me perfectly. I don't have any I don't have any issues. I don't have to relate to you as other than myself. You get to just be me." Um, then he gets caught. He gets caught there, and it wastes him away. Um, and I think that can be compared to narcissism, where you get caught in your own needs and desires, and everybody else becomes a source of narcissistic fuel for you to help you feel that. Now why that happens is a whole other story, but yeah.
Yeah, in the myth of Narcissus, you said that yeah, he's kind of falling in love with his image, and I was thinking how when he like presumably in healthy love there is a connection in sexual relationship, there's a bodily connection. I mean, you go together, but when Narcissus tries to do that with the pool of water, everything shatters, and then he just has to view it from afar. He can't, there's no amorous love or erotic love. There's no union with the object of his beloved, the object that he loved. He just has to there's an austerity there, and that fits with the image of that whole place as sort of being like a Garden of Eden, like it's in a way, I guess I should say I guess the Garden of Eden in the Bible also had fruits that you could eat and everything. But I just meant the comparison in terms of it being in sort of unnatural perfection. Um, the shepherds won't go there. They won't be fed by it. No conscious being, anyway, will be fed by it. It's just the grass and the leaves and everything, uh, the trees around it. And yeah, he had come there from hunting, and he wanted to drink the water, and then he got caught by that image. And so there's a power of beauty, there's a power of love there, but we can't really, he can't be fed by it, he can't grow by it. And then so, like Echo, after him, he kind of descends into death.
Yeah. I think the point you make of the lack of an other, the lack of coming together, the lack of of the body or of eros or of like some sort of a interpersonal force, like you have to have that friction between self and other that is
Mm,
caused by like, oh, I want something that they don't want in order to have the experience of other so that you can
mm,
have the experience of actual coming together, of
mm.
joining. And if you're not able to do that, if everything is yourself, if everything is, in the narcissistic way, if all you're focusing on is your needs and nobody else act as far as you're concerned, your behavior and your activity in the world is concerned, nobody else has any needs that matter. Your needs are
Mm.
the only thing that matter. You're stuck in that trap of like every time I try to meet somebody, there's nobody there because all I'm seeing is myself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your heart kind of wastes away. The part of you that comes alive in relationship with another
Yeah.
wastes away. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. We're really getting a lot from this image here. I mean,
Yeah. I really wasn't sure where this was going to go because, like I was telling you at the beginning, I came to this call kind of abruptly and sort of briefly scanned over my notes that I'd written, but didn't really have a chance to like, okay, I'm going to talk about this and this. But just sometimes reading a story, the story, we feed the story by reading it, and the story feeds us by revealing all the facets that it contains, if we keep our attention on it.
yeah. Yeah, that's right. So getting back to attachment theory, is it kind of like there's a the healthy attachment is somewhere between the avoidant attachment. So there's the avoidant attachment where you're sort of focused on yourself and maybe your own developmental needs and everything and psychological needs. And so you're sort of avoiding getting close to other people. And the anxious attachment is sort of where you're clinging to other people and you're sort of ignorant or ignoring your own internal kind of self. Is something like that? And then
So yeah,
something in
I
the
mean,
middle is healthy.
yeah, I will preface this by saying I'm not an expert on this, and I didn't do a
Hmm.
lot of reading on it up front. So
Mm.
if I misspeak, forgive me. But what I can sort of bring into this discussion, um, in this moment in response to what you're putting on the table is like there's anxious attachment, there's avoidant attachment, there's healthy attachment, and there's disorganized attachment, as I think sort of the four bases that they have. And disorganized is when you're both anxious and avoidant. So sometimes you
Mm.
want to be close, sometimes you want people to go away.
Mm.
Um, the healthy attachment is one at least within the confines of this conversation, the way I'm seeing it is like, especially with the narcissus myth, is like when you're in a relationship and you come across some level of mismatch between you and the other person,
Mm.
the attachment, the sort of comfort and the ease and the joy and the love and the, this is great together, like something breaks that.
Mm.
Or there's some kind of anxiety that rises. Something feels off. You don't feel safe in
Mm.
the connection. Um, if you're anxious, you will glom onto the other person and try and pull that connection back from them,
Mm.
which mirrors what you'll do as what people will do as a child if their parent. This is where they think this is where attachment theory sort of
Mm.
theorizes where it comes from. Is
Mm.
if you're a child and your parents don't pay you enough attention,
Mm.
you will either act up to get their attention. You'll cling to them, you'll pull at them, you'll cry louder, you'll make sort of more of your pain in order to bring them to you.
Hmm.
And then as an adult, when you feel unsafe in a relationship, you may start freaking out. You may start
Hmm.
obsessing. You may start texting somebody all the time to try and pull them. Hey, I'm really upset. I can't believe, blah, where are you? Why haven't you? Like, oh my God, did they text me? Oh my God, did they text me yet? Like
Hmm.
that's that anxiety because your body is used to when it feels unsafe in the connection, it's used to doing something to reach out to pull the connection back in.
Yeah.
Whereas with avoidant attachment, um, you realize like, oh, like my parents aren't my mother, my father, whatever, they're not going to attend to me. I have to attend to myself. So
Mm.
you sort of turn down the need to connect. You focus inwardly and you're like, I got to figure this out myself. I can't rely on other people. Other people are messy. The problem that I'm experiencing here is in them. I have to withdraw from them and focus on myself. So it's not self-focused in the narcissistic way exactly,
Mm.
because it's placing the origin of the problem in the other person. Whereas I think with anxious attachment, you're saying, oh, the origin is something about me, and I just need to pull it from them. I need to do whatever I can to get it from them. Whereas in healthy attachment, it's sort of like, oh, we had there's this discomfort here. Let's talk about it. The discomfort doesn't become a threat to the relationship. It doesn't
Mm.
necessitate pulling at the person. It doesn't necessitate pushing the person away. You're able to stay connected, healthfully attached, safely attached, even though there's some discomfort.
Mm.
And so as children, if your parents pay enough attention to you, parents aren't going to be perfect. There are going to be moments where you feel that lack of safety. But if your parents are able to come in and be like, "Oh, hey, I said sorry, kiddo. Especially if you're slightly older, like, sorry, I was busy. I love you. Let's go. How you feeling? What's going on?" And they're able to kind of mirror back to you in that healthy way. You can see that it's safe to have yourself mirrored in another person,
Mm.
and you don't have to do the mirroring entirely yourself, or you
Mm.
don't have to abandon yourself to hope that somebody will give you the safety that you don't feel inside.
Mm.
The safety is sort of, I'm safe, you're safe. Something feels unsafe. Let's see if we can work through that. That's
Mm.
kind of you don't sort of fall off on either side,
Mm.
self or other.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm seeing a little bit of people I know and myself in what you're talking about. Do you happen to know of anything? We're also going to link narcissism and these related kinds of stories and concepts to uh, sort of societal wide concerns. I was thinking of like divorce, for example. Maybe you could, divorce slash single parenthood, but the divorce rate has been, something in the neighborhood of 50% for, I don't know how many generations now, maybe since the 1980s, or I think at least since the 1980s. But do you know anything about those types of situations and attachment kind of problems? I've never heard any data on that, but it's got to have an effect.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have any data or any kind of like particular things that I have heard. Um, I will say like it's a complicated subject because one of the reasons I think we have a lot of divorce is like we're living a lot longer. 100 years ago,
Mm.
150 years ago at this point, like, 200 years ago, the life expectancy was like the average life expectancy was like 40 years old, 40,
Mm.
50 years old. So I'm 45, like I might be dead. I've sort of lived beyond I'm now in most of human history, I'm elderly.
Mm.
And most of the chances are most people are my age are dead on average. And so when we're talking about marriage, granted they'd get married a little younger, but you'd get married, you'd have kids. Life was difficult and complicated and dangerous, and your social circle was smaller. So it's not like you could go to the big city and be around all these people. So now we have people living longer. We have people exposed to a variety of more people, and our lives are a lot easier. So, things that wouldn't have been a problem 200 years ago, 500 years ago, um, becomes a problem for us because we have the luxury of noticing.
Mhm.
And I think that, granted, like there's a lot in our culture as well around the sort of dissolution of the community or the village, so that, the partner now needs to be able to fulfill everything. All of our needs need to be met by this one person.
Yeah,
And
there's
so,
a big problem with that. Yeah.
yeah. So when they don't, and especially when these kind of, attachment problems come in or something, if we think, as we have been sort of indoctrinated, that if I can just find the right person, my relationship will go smoothly and I'll, live
Yeah.
happily ever after. And then when that doesn't happen, we think the problem is either in ourselves or it's in the other person, and that breaks the relationship. But I think the cause of that is a lot deeper than just, oh, human beings are, I don't know what the theory would be, like, oh, we're worse. Things are worse than they used to be. We need to go back to the old days. It's like our lifespan is longer. The people we are around are greater. We are putting too much weight on the relationship in the first place. Like, to fix the problem requires attention on all of these different points. If you're trying to fix the social problem of divorce, I don't think, I'm a bit of a Taoist in that regard. I don't think it's our job to fix such things. I think they develop as we develop our own virtue, the society around us becomes more virtuous and will move in a better direction.
Yeah, me too.
Um, I figured you'd agree. Um, but yeah, I mean, divorce, narcissism, the focus on the self, something. So let me ask you, like you had mentioned sort of leading up to this, a link between this myth and sort of online culture, or I think you mentioned Jonathan Haidt. Am I right
Hmm.
on that front?
Yeah.
And I don't know, and you also Vervaeke, I know maybe has something to say about this with regards to the meaning crisis and all that. So I don't know if there's any way you can sort of tie that in, or if you have anything just to say a bit more about divorce. Like, I feel like I kind of tapped that out, but if you have something to add.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, in terms of, it seemed like you're talking about kind of the causes of divorce. And I'd agree with that on a longer time scale. But in terms of uh, the effect of divorce during childhood, and especially, younger childhood, say the first 10 years or so of life, I think that has of the child's life. I think that has increased in a lot in modern times. And when you know, the we didn't have like a prehistoric life expectancy. Although, yeah, life also, I think, even since maybe the 40s or 50s has gotten somewhat easier, although also, yeah, more complicated. But yeah, I was more wondering if attachment theory or just developmental psychology has stuff to say about divorce on a mass scale, in terms of the effect of it on the children. Because if we're talking
Mm,
about the attention alone on the children would be way different in divorce. But I think also, I don't know if attachment theory has stuff to say about this, but just, presumably, the child has a sense, the mother father relationship has to be pretty important for most kids, right? And just seeing that as sort of somewhat stable or breaking, and then choosing to break it has to have like some kind of, effect on a lot of people. So, but yeah, I don't know if you
interesting.
have stuff to say about that. But yeah, and I just yeah, I wonder about that.
Yeah, no, thanks for clarifying, because I definitely misinterpreted the question. Uh, but yeah, no, I think that's an interesting area because um, I would say maybe because I think that you're right that the parental relationship is one that impacts the child um on a less than conscious level.
Mm.
So that like if you grow up and your parents are fighting all the time and then they get a divorce, uh it's sort of baked into your understanding of the world of like, oh, that's how relationships go. Like you're not
Yeah.
logically thinking that, but on a maybe emotional or subconscious level, like that kind of gets in there. I
Mm.
think there's not a story. There's a thing I've heard from Dan Siegel, who's the inventor of interpersonal neurobiology. Very
Mm.
interesting guy. I really love his work. Um, and I wish I had a source for this. I don't have the source. It may have been something I read on like an online article or something, but it's stuck in my head ever since I read it. He points out that clinically speaking, as far as my remembrance of it goes, they've done studies where like if you have angry parents, the children who have anger issues, who develop anger issues, are the ones more often it's the ones where the parents will say things like, "Oh, I don't have an anger problem. What are you
Mm.
talking about? I'm totally fine." Whereas the parents who are able to say, "Oh, I have an anger problem. I'm working on it in this way. Here's what's going on," and the parents are conscious of their issue, then the issue gets much less likely that it's going to be passed on to the kids.
Mm.
And I would say I would I would, my own theory, put it that way, would be that divorce would be somewhat similar. That if you have parents who are always fighting, but they never come to some sort of agreement or terms where they are clear and they can emotionally reflect to you, yes, we had a lot of fights, but we're making this decision, and we actually feel it's a good decision. It's healthy. This is good for us. That would probably have less of an effect on the child than if they were to stay together but continue to hate each other. Because I think, you have the divorces would have spiked. I don't have data on this, but it seems colloquially true. Like the 40s and 50s, not a lot of divorces happened. Social stigma, people you didn't do it. It wasn't a thing that was done. And so you had a lot of people who, stayed together for the kids, but they hated each other. So those kids grew up in an environment where love was fake, hate was really what was going on under the surface, and the way to be successful in a relationship was not to talk about it. And so you get to a point where those children are going to say, no, I don't want that. If I'm not happy in a relationship, I'm going to step away from it. And then you have the divorce increase, the increase in divorce in the 60s and 70s, the hippie era, like and so on from there sort of expands, along with all of the sort of standard counterculture stuff in that time frame. Would kind of be how I would look at it. But then, as you've been pointing out, like simply getting divorced doesn't solve the problem either, because oftentimes you're just running away from an issue. You're not clear on what's going on with you and what's going on with the other person. There's not enough effort and work put in to try and resolve the connections so that people's nervous systems feel safe with the decision that they're making. And I think that's the thing that maybe gets passed on down to kids in this sort of attachment theory way.
Mm.
Whether it's with an unhappy marriage that people just stay in. And granted, you can have a marriage with problems, but again, if you talk about them, if you're conscious of them, if you're working on them, then it's less likely to have this spillover effect onto the child. Whereas if you're heavily suppressing them in yourself, then the child will likely have the same issues pop up in their life, more likely.
Mm.
At least that's a theory that I believe, and I think I have seen enough evidence of in my life of friends and people I know who have um, had issues that, as I've talked with them, I find that, how their parents reflect or don't reflect in their issues and sort of where that comes from.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, just something about getting clear on things, I think, is kind of the
Yeah.
takeaway.
Yeah, I think that would have a good effect on the child. And so it seems like you're not you're pointing more to maybe the sort of the relationship of the parents, whether divorced or not, and their sort of relationship with themselves and kind of how self-aware they are, which kind of brings it to the myth of Narcissus again in terms of not having self-awareness. Um, I do think, I mean, there's a lot of possibility there. You sort of said like you sort of implied that maybe there just is more divorce just because the people who would have gotten divorced in an earlier era, just didn't because of social pressure or whatever. But I'm just sort of wondering still of the effect on the children of just that relationship breaking and people choosing to break it. I don't remember much data, but one thing you could compare is children whose parents got divorced or children who had one parent die. And I think there's a lot of differences there, even though both of them have like a separation and a grief and something dying and everything. But I think the fact that the parent the parents chose to break it off or something. I wonder if there's something about that the child might have assumed or something that might have an effect. But yeah, we don't have to dwell on this. But I just think it's an interesting thing about child psychological development that is a huge kind of data point or a huge kind of something that's happened in our society a lot. And I wonder what kinds of effects it has. And I think it kind of has some bad effects. But yeah, but yeah, that's kind of like a long way maybe from what we're talking about with narcissism.
Well, here, let me see if I can bring it back because you've given me some good material.
Mm,
Where you're talking about like the dissolution of the parents' relationship, it would make sense to me that that would have some kind of an impact on the child, regardless. And I
mm.
think regardless of whether they talked about it and whatever, you're still like, oh well, love can end, which is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
true, which is kind of true, but
Hmm.
it is sort of an early disillusionment of the child, perhaps.
Mm,
Um, but I think there's an element of it where like the story that you're telling yourself, even if it's unconscious, about what it means, that's kind of the thing that impacts the child the most. So if there's this sense of like, oh, I love this person, but I can't be with them because they're such an asshole, or I'm a bad person, or we can't. It's just like you're creating a story about reality that says like my needs and other people's needs can't coexist. And then that, regardless of if you're staying together and you're miserable, or if you're getting a divorce and it's a problematic divorce, or it's even kind of a good divorce, like there's still this story of like, oh, these things can't coexist.
mm,
Um, and I definitely would think that the impact on the child would have something to do with the society around them as well. Like if the parents had enough support, maybe it would be less impactful, but because we're such a nuclear family, it has some issues. But the
mm,
way I think this ties back into the Narcissus myth is what you had said about Rousseau and the sort of self-love, the way he talked about self-love, sort of, you'll have to remind me if you can. I know Rousseau's not the easiest thing to kind of dip into.
mm,
But when it comes to like my needs, my self-love, and then the way that interacts with the world, I think
mm,
that's exactly what we're talking about in divorce. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing in the Narcissus myth when it comes to like Echo, Echo's desire for Narcissus, he wants nothing to do with. But and he gets so much attention put on him that he doesn't allow anyone else to have needs. He doesn't acknowledge that other people have these desires for him. But as soon as he has desires for himself, like there isn't that other to reflect it back on him. And so
mm,
like as we've talked about it, it's sort of it's very solipsistic.
Mm.
He's just kind of caught in himself. And I feel like that ties back into the Rousseau stuff that you sort of sent me ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I don't want to get Rousseau wrong, but I can try to just say a little bit about it. So it seems like he gives a hypothetical thought experiment like account of human social historical development of humanity, where we used to be kind of relatively solitary creatures that had all our physical needs met, and we kind of met for brief periods of time to kind of copulate or whatever. But as we settled down into agricultural societies, then each other's needs started butting up against each other, and we started to develop, instead of that natural self-love, that amour de soi, we started to have this growth of amour-propre, which is kind of like a self-love that's dependent upon how we think others see us, and it is
Mm.
competitive, and it wants others to like us more than we like them, or to esteem us more than we esteem them. So it in modern times that can be a huge problem. He always points to how in modern times, especially even more than in earlier agricultural societies, we're so materially interdependent upon each other, and we're so much competing with each other, and our sense of self is very much this like mask that we're kind of, yeah, we're trying to get admiration from others, but we can't do that by being our true selves. So we have to be this fake mask. And so we end up, yeah, being dependent on others and kind of empty inside. So that's something a little bit like what Rousseau is talking about.
Nice, nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's not how I had been thinking of it. Um, one thing I want to say, I like his sort of, or at least your version of his brief sketch of human history, because I feel like that maps really well onto like when we're infants, we're very alone,
Mm,
and all of our needs are met. And then as
mm,
we start meeting other people, start acknowledging that other people exist, then we get into this conflict. So it like his
mm,
human history kind of maps onto the personal human development of a lifetime. I think that's pretty cool.
mm,
Um, and the mask, the way we that's so interesting because I think that touches on like the more malignant kind of narcissism where we have no esteem of our own
mhm,
and we have to generate it by creating a mask that is sufficiently blank, whatever, sufficiently handsome, sufficiently
mhm,
powerful, sufficiently rich, sufficiently
mhm,
charming, sufficiently funny enough that the other person will give us esteem and
mhm,
make up for what we lack in ourselves.
mhm,
Um, and I think something I have heard around narcissism is that it's usually based on something very painful.
mhm,
Like in order to not be a narcissist, they like to find that esteem in themselves instead of trying to constantly be harvesting it off of other people. There's some sort of a repressed, painful, traumatic experience that they may not even be able to face or understand or like reach back into, but that it's through trying to do that um they might find their own well of esteem and stop
mhm,
needing to pull from other people. But once you get someone who's, dangerously narcissistic, such as they're running a cult or, they're whatever you want to, whatever role you want to kind of throw on that,
mhm,
I don't think it's likely that people like that are going to
Yeah.
be interested in doing that kind of work or reach out to a qualified therapist who can guide them, even, maybe not even a therapist, something a little more shamanic, a little deeper into the psyche and the unconscious. I can kind of guide them through that, coming to face whatever pain, whatever demon it is that they're running from, and sort of, I don't know, die to it and come out the other side. I don't know how that would work. I'm not,
Yeah.
I can't theorize the words around it, but
Mm.
I understand enough of the process that like it would be very rare for someone with that issue to be willing to deal with that issue. So it's not to say that it's hopeless, but it's to say that like that's why you often that you have there's a lot of stuff on the internet about like the narcissist and the empath kind of
Mhm.
gets, seduced by the narcissist, um and I think that's the empath is somebody who says, "Oh, it's I know it's possible for you to not have to suffer this way, and I want to help you."
Mhm.
But you're trying to help someone who has no interest in being helped.
Yeah.
They like that you're giving them attention. So they
Yeah.
say, "Yeah, yeah, you can help me. Come
Yeah.
on, help me out. Come along. Just keep staring at me and telling me how much you want to be around me, and I'll be fine."
Yeah.
And then once you get sick of it, then maybe you'll leave or maybe you won't. But as soon as you leave, then like I'm going to need help again. So maybe you'll come back.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's sort of I mean, it's a more extreme, more virulent version of the like anxious attached and avoidant attached, because usually those two will kind of find each other because they both kind of have
Mm.
the tendency that the other person lacks.
Mm.
The avoidant person is able to go into themselves and find something that they can rest in and not be concerned about like, oh, I need to have this secure attachment. But they don't feel secure going into the attachment. Whereas the anxious person feels very secure going, they're very secure here, but they're not secure in themselves. So
Mm.
they're always trying to get, I don't think that maps directly onto they're both a little bit narcissistic. They're both a little bit self-obsessed.
Mm.
But again, it's a mirroring of like these two types that will sort of crash together. You lose yourself or you lose the other,
Mm.
and you want ideally to kind of be able to maintain both.
Mm. Yeah, with a narcissist not seeking help. I mean, I think there's some clinical kind of diagnoses where people usually don't seek help, like psychopathy and things, because, or I don't know why exactly, but I imagine because they don't see a problem with it. They're maybe not suffering in a way where they would seek therapy. So, I mean, that's sort of a tautological kind of explanation, but yeah, they essentially maybe don't think anything is wrong with them. If they can be a very effective person in the world, they get a lot of praise or resources or whatever, and they basically maybe haven't suffered enough or fallen enough or yeah. And I also think back again to that image of Narcissus and the lack of self-awareness. And I think self-knowledge is very much tied in with self-awareness. Why, what your feel, uh, I don't know, what am I trying to say? It's something about your awareness of who you really are, um, and what standard you're using. Maybe there's an inherent sense in everybody that if your ultimate standard is just what other people think and what society thinks, then there is an inherent sense of this is not real. That if you could tap into that and go past the um, effectiveness you have with other people in the world, then maybe that could lead you into some sort of therapy, wisdom seeking practices and everything. I would think that most people maybe have something like that. But what do you think about that?
Yeah. Excuse me. Um, yeah, it's the like the narcissist in this particular case where like the you're saying they haven't had enough consequences, they haven't suffered enough.
Hmm.
I think it's they my guess would be that it's sort of like they see that as other people's problems,
Hmm.
and they sort of they there's a lack of awareness of how other people's unhappiness or suffering impacts them.
Yeah.
Like they don't care.
Yeah.
And they don't have a sense of their own. They don't esteem themselves enough to have a sense that they exist as a subject. They just exist as like the reflections that everybody else give, the way that other people reflect back at them who they are. Um, and so what am I trying to say? So because like they don't have an interior world, they don't have a sense of self that exists, despite being narcissistically focused on their self-image. It's sort of the self-image that other people feed them with, you know. So they don't have an interior self that they can rely on, that they don't have an esteem of themselves that they can say, oh, well, I esteem myself, I am valuable, I have good traits, um, and I'm okay with that, even if somebody else says that I'm an asshole. Which is funny because like as soon as you start putting these things into words, like I'm describing something that seems very counter narcissistic. Because narcissists are all, oh, I'm the best. I'm the best. Of course I'm the best. Look at me. I'm the best. Everybody thinks I'm the best. I'm the best. I'm the best. But what's going on inside of them is they need that story that everybody thinks they're the best, and they
Hmm.
need to cultivate and sort of continue to harvest that story
Hmm.
because somewhere inside of them is a lack of that belief. They don't actually believe that. If they believed they were genuinely worthy beings, they wouldn't need everybody to remind them of that all the time. They
Hmm.
wouldn't be upset when somebody said no to them, or when somebody, said, "Hey, you're being kind of an asshole." They'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I esteem myself enough that I can take your feedback that I'm being an asshole, and I esteem that you have your own interior world that I've inadvertently injured, and I apologize. And how can I make amends?" There's a here and a there that you can sort of bridge between. Whereas with narcissists, there's no here. There's nothing in them that exists of itself. Everything they have is propped up by other people's images of them that they can rely upon. And they just sort of like, again, they just sort of cultivate and harvest that.
Hmm.
Um, I forget where we started from, that sort of that image of the
Well,
hollow and the harvesting kind
hmm.
of overpowered my
Yeah,
my
yeah.
memory. Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean that is kind of a powerful way of thinking about narcissism. I think maybe one thing that I had wondered about is why they don't see a need for personal growth or going to some type of therapy or deeper conversation with themselves.
Mm, yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah.
some of it, like you were saying, that it's they don't see a problem and that they're they're and they don't care when they blame others and things. And I think that there's something about blaming others and psychological problems not getting better. Again, bringing it to self-awareness. That I heard the psychologist or psychiatrist Anna Lemke on a podcast, and it was Joe Rogan, I think, and he had asked her, so in all your decades of experience, have you noticed a pattern where people in general get better or they don't? Which is a great question to ask a experienced psychologist. And
Yeah.
I think she at first said, not really, maybe thinking of all the complexity. And then she said, well, actually, yeah. And it's when they either take responsibility for who they are or they blame others, which really makes sense to me. I mean, yeah, you
Mm,
got to see that there's a problem before you face all the difficulty of changing it and
yeah.
uncertainty.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. And I think that does. that kind of does answer the question you were presenting earlier of narcissism, of like what why they don't see that there's a problem, why they don't seek help, is because in order to take responsibility, like there has to be a sense of general innate goodness, or like there has to be a self
Mm,
there, like to take responsibility. And I think like hmm, almost like a self apart from the images you get from other people.
mm,
Um, because if you don't esteem yourself, if you don't believe that you're a relatively good person, or you don't even believe, like if within their psychic interiority, within their psychology, there is no healthy narcissism, there is no healthy sense of self as existing in the world, um, then there's nothing to work on. There's nothing to improve.
mm,
If you are receiving, if your only sense of self is that people are esteeming me and they think I'm pretty badass, and that's all I need, is just people to think that I'm badass, and then I'm pretty badass. I'm pretty handsome. I'm pretty powerful. I'm loved. Everybody loves me. Um, if that's the only place you derive your sense of self, then why would you go to therapy? Therapy's telling me I'm selfish. Therapy's telling me I'm uncaring of other people. Therapy's telling me I'm a narcissist. Why do I want to do any of that? You're creating this thing in me that's horrible. Everybody else loves me. What's wrong with you? Why would you even do that to me?
yeah,
Why would I be interested in listening to you tell me how horrible you think I am when I can just go out there and, I don't know, seduce somebody, or give a speech or whatever, and everybody loves me and it's great and that's all I need.
yeah,
That makes me okay.
yeah,
Um, you know, but there's no you. And so because there's no you, nobody else has a you either. And so you can just use them up. And when they leave, it's their problem, it's their fault, and you'll find somebody else.
yeah,
Um, you know, I think I'm seeing mirrors here between narcissists and the people who try to care for them, and like humanity in general and the ecological crisis. Like we just sort of keep taking from the planet, we keep dumping things on it, and there's no sense of like um mutuality or of respect, or of like, oh, the unhappiness around me will one day impact me in such a way that I will have to come to terms with the harm I have caused,
mm,
because I'm refusing to see it, but it still exists. So
mm,
that would be the turnaround moment for somebody who is maybe borderline narcissist, but was not fully narcissistic. And that, the moment that would turn them towards therapy is like, oh my God, my actions had consequences that hurt this person and maybe caused them to hurt me or something,
mm,
in such a way that like I have to look at my whole process. Like you have to be willing to sort of investigate your whole process, and or be due to the consequences that you have witnessed in whatever,
mm. And they
whatever
finally
way.
become real to you.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like so much of wisdom is what is real to you. This is kind of Vervaeke, my Vervaeke influence too. But
Hmm.
yeah, and maybe Buddhism too. I mean, isn't a lot of Buddhist like you're trying to make real to your mind what is really real rather than the illusions. Isn't that kind of at a core of Buddhism?
Yeah.
Realize what
Yeah.
is
I would
what your mind
say,
really is like.
yeah. Yeah, for sure. Realize the true nature of your mind and how it works. Um, as you get deeper into Buddhist ontology, like their way of understanding the world, it gets more complicated, and
Hmm.
it's worded so differently from the psychological, narcissistic, whatever stuff that however you would word the stuff
Hmm.
we've been talking about, that they don't quite map one onto the other,
Hmm.
because in Buddhism, like, there is this sense of like self kind of doesn't exist, others
Hmm.
kind of don't exist, and that would imply, within our earlier discussion, that's how I was describing the narcissists. They don't really exist, other people don't
Hmm.
exist
Yeah,
for
I
them.
was actually
So
thinking of that when you were saying that.
so we have the trouble of trying to put things into words, and words never being, they don't ever actually capture the whole idea.
Mm.
They can be turned against each other. But in how would I talk about that
Could I offer
in Buddhism?
something?
I'm not sure. Yeah, please. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was just thinking, I mean, in terms of the narcissist thinking, like not kind of having a very good theory of mind of others, it's just seeing others not as their own mind, like me, but as just sort of that which feeds me or doesn't, which, you're gone. But I was thinking, I mean, Buddhism still acknowledges there is conscious experience, and isn't that a lot of what meditation is about and everything? And I would think the narcissist, if they could grow, they could realize others are like me. They are a consciousness. They experience stuff and they experience pain. And I know what pain is like, and I don't want to and hope, and I don't want to do that to others. So I would think that'd be something like what a trying to meld that picture of narcissism and something general about Buddhism together, and narcissistic growth from narcissism maybe.
Yeah. No, I think I would agree with that in any case. I was going to say I think you're spot on, but I feel
Yeah, we don't want
unqualified
to.
to maybe say that.
Mm,
But I would agree with you. Within my own view, I think you make a good point of like, um, there is the reality of other people's experience that's
yeah.
happening, and
Mm,
if you are not in touch with that, then that's ignorance. You are
yeah.
ignorant of, and that's like the core Buddhist. I don't want to call it sin, maybe, but that's the core issue in Buddhism is ignorance. Ignorance, greed, and anger, I think, are kind of the three poisons, but ignorance is kind of the most underlying one of them. And
Mm,
just that you're not aware of something that's happening, and
yeah.
it's happening, and so that causes dukkha, that causes the friction, the suffering, because it's
Yeah.
happening, and you're acting like it's not happening
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's
you
great.
know so
Yeah.
narcissism in that case is, not only is there nothing really going on over there other than are they feeding me or not, but there's nothing inside that is actually healthy in and of itself. Like, I only
Mm,
exist when I'm being fed, and if I'm not being fed the right way, I don't exist, and that makes me angry.
mm,
So like the external doesn't exist as anything real, and the internal kind of doesn't exist as anything real other than the reflection that you are getting from other people. Like, that's the
mm,
only thing that's really real for you is how other people see you, and then you do everything you can to make sure that you're seen in as positive a light, or you're
yeah.
reflected as positively as you can be,
Yeah.
due to that sort of ignorance of self and ignorance of other.
Yeah. Yeah. The ignorance of the state of others or whatnot. And I also think it gets back to the image of the myth in that Narcissus is not in love with the person who presumably is behind the image. It is not knowledgeable, it is ignorance, and it is this superficial beauty, which makes me think of the sort of narcissistic persons looking for this external validation. It's this very superficial kind of thing. Maybe at one and it's a little bit like maybe what a dictator wants, having only yes men around him. Like, it, and dictators are intelligent people. They know that they can think through like, wait a second, these people are kind of doing this because they just don't want to be killed and they have their own agenda and stuff. But, so, and that brings back the insecurity. But yeah, it's this. Yeah, it seems like when we think of narcissism and, some opposite of that, we get one one contrast is knowledge, is
Hmm.
the ignorance of narcissism, of the interiority or the reality, etc., the suffering of others, uh, and on the other hand, the knowledge that I have that, I don't know what the nature of others' minds are and everything, but I know they're like me. They can suffer. They can have happiness. We can have togetherness if there's a give and take of my needs, who I am, my expression, and theirs, and then we can kind of, I don't know if this is a good starting point, but and then you can kind of take off from there, from isolated selves to some kind of good community, discourse, and maybe connection with divine or connection with the roots of being. That can, I think, be maybe a very good um, antidote to the maybe naturally narcissistic kind of pull of our own nature, or our own bad, not bad development, or our society, with social media and everything, this awareness and this trying to prop up this image of ourselves. But yeah, I just
Hmm.
kind of laid out a lot of possible tangential kind of information, but I don't know if any of that strikes, which of that may strike your interest.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think the sort of because you made this really good distinction of like I don't know what's going on for other people, and that's true. Like I don't know what you're thinking right now. You're looking at the screen, or me on the screen, and you're nodding your head. So I'm like, okay, like there's some sort of a resonance here, and I can sort of unconsciously, but I can tell from like your facial expression, like you're engaged. You're listening, you're nodding your head. It seems good, but I don't know exactly what you're thinking.
Yeah,
Right. So there's an element of like if I am if I am to be as aware of you as an entity, as an other, as something real that is not directly directly real for me as like my own what's going on, my thoughts. I know how I'm feeling. I know what I'm
yeah,
about to say, more or less. The other person becomes like a mystery. It becomes an unknown, but there's something there to relate to. There's a
yeah,
mystery there to relate to, and whether we're talking about like an easy way to point that out, as I just did, is like as a person, because you have this whole interiority to yourself, and I have this interiority to myself. Mine's a mystery to you, yours is a mystery to me, but we can still meet, and there can be an interaction there. But the same is true of the world. Like we think we
yeah,
understand the world, but we're
yeah,
not we're not as sure of many, many things as we think we are. And
yeah,
oftentimes we look at something and think it's figured out. And so we don't actually get to know it as a mystery.
yeah.
And so like I think one of the things that you get in I don't even know where I get this from. I'm trying to trace it back. I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but the idea of like relationship as a spiritual practice,
Mm,
your partner continually presents the mystery that is the world to you. And in order to relate with them in a healthy way, you have to be in the moment and not
yeah,
caught in your concepts of who they are,
yeah,
and the concepts of how they see you and just what this relationship means. You have to be kind of willing to step into that mystery and that unknown over and over and over and over again. And then I think ultimately, hopefully you would get to a place where like even that where that mystery enters even you. So you're like, oh, I'm not quite sure.
right.
I know I exist. I know I'm here, but maybe I'm operating on a lot of concepts about who I am. Maybe they're not true. Can I find out what's true about myself? And the sort of that instead of being caught in this like narcissistic image of, oh, this image of myself is true, and I'm in love with this
Yeah,
image, and I just have to make this image real and as solid as I can make it, and I'll be good. You're like,
yeah,
oh, I don't have any image of myself, and I need to get to know myself over and over again. The in a quantum kind of a way, the observer the subject becomes the observed, becomes the object.
Hmm.
And through that, the ever-changing mystery kind of it can animate you,
Hmm.
and the ways that you already are that you don't know or you don't see or you don't understand about yourself can start to present.
Yeah.
And you can sort of surprise yourself in hopefully good ways um, over time.
Yeah, I think that's a very good portrait of how to maintain some sort of relational vitality with between you and other people and the whole world, and how that develops, changes, and there's a sense of knowledge to it where you're exploring, you're trying to understand, you're trying, and there will be some differentiation and some conceptual building. But then you're also open, and you're aware of the grounding of mystery to it all, and how your those concepts will change or be destroyed, and you maintain this kind of going forward into whatever it all is, and trying to change with it, or allowing
Yeah.
yourself to change with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of something you had said. Maybe this is the next place to go with this, but something you had said in the text conversation from earlier this week was in regards to Vervaeke was sort of a linking of narcissism and unearned esteem.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear anything else you have to say about that. But the reason I'm bringing that in right now is that like, oh man, so the mystery of reality, the mystery that like it's we're never quite sure what's presented to us. And we can have concepts about it, but that's never going to match what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that like the truth of our interior reality is that we are a mystery to ourselves. We don't know
Yeah.
ourselves at all, and we can grow to interact with that mystery over time, and we can sort of refine what we mean by myself and this thing that I am and which parts what it is. Like all of that can be refined over time. But if you don't, if if you if you want to just have an answer of who you are rather than the admittedly somewhat scary question of I don't know who I am, you get caught in needing an image. And then you can get sort of magnetized onto that image more and more to save you from sort of the fear of the mystery. But if you can start to esteem the mystery, if you can start to appreciate that, wow, I don't know who I am, and it's an adventure, it's mysterious, it's wonderful, it's terrifying, it's full of awe in that religious, scary kind of a, what the fuck is even going on here kind of a way. Like it, to the extent that you can value that process in yourself, you don't need external reinforcement. You don't need
Mhm.
unnecessary, what's the Vervaeke term?
Oh,
Um,
unearned positive regard. I think that's how he defines narcissism.
Perfect. Perfect. You don't need that anymore because you've learned to face the mystery of yourself and regard that positively.
Yeah.
And as soon as you're like, oh, this fountain of mystery inside of me that is always presenting something that is kind of familiar, but is also kind of completely a mystery. I'm not sure what is going on here. If you're like, this is interesting,
Yeah.
then you don't need any unearned external validation like that.
Mm.
Um, that's really, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that's sort of life as an adventure, life as knowledge building. How do you make sure, and this is another Vervaekean sort of Platonic kind of thing, how do you make sure you don't get solipsistic, though, where you're maybe overly concerned with, yeah, your internal kinds of processes, yourself, because it is always, after all, a every single bit of information you get within your body and mind is potential clues to who you are. And if you're trying to, or maybe I'm mischaracterizing, but uh, but who, if you're trying to find out who you are, then maybe you can get solipsistic and too focused on just your internal processes.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to hear what Vervaeke has to say about that, but my thought would be like, like we were talking earlier with the narcissist, like there are other people. They are also just as mysterious and interesting as my own internal world or the world as a whole is. And there are good ways to relate to them that are enjoyable, and there are ways where if I'm not paying attention to them, they have an impact on me.
Mm.
And what does that mean? I mean, um,
Mm.
you kind of can't ignore other people, like because they exist. So, I mean, you could go completely solipsistic and run off to a cave somewhere and live on your own and grow your own food and have no interaction with other people. But even at that point, you're interacting with the world.
Mm.
In order to eat, you have to raise food or you have to go hunting. You have to understand the seasons. You have to understand something about the world that's outside of yourself. If you go completely inside yourself, you're a vegetable. There's no information coming in from the world around you. Um, you're not even there anymore. So,
Mm.
um, I think the danger is more one of pretending that the outside isn't impacting you when it is, because
Mm.
it always will. If as long as you need to eat, as long as your system is not entirely self-sustaining, you need to interact with the outside world. And if you need to interact with the outside world, you are interacting with the mystery as an other, as opposed to the mystery of my own being.
Mm.
Um, and I think you maybe want to burn that particular candle at both ends so
Mm.
that like the other person, you're comfortable with the other person's mystery and you're comfortable with your own mystery and
Mm.
you're comfortable with the two of them being the same mystery. And you don't have to protect and guard against things quite as much.
So you're kind of saying how to not be so solipsistic is to understand that the world and others are just as much a mystery as yourself. So you might as well sort of pay attention to them too. And also, they impact you, so you will suffer if you don't pay enough attention to others and the world around you. I mean, that.
Yeah, I mean, I would sort of clarify, not cl turn the dial down on that last statement of like, if you don't pay attention, you will suffer. Like it's true, and that is what I was saying. And so this is more of a refinement, but it's
Mm.
like other people impact you, and it's already happening. Like
Mm.
we don't really exist, entirely on our own. They say we're oftentimes you can map the person's personality onto like the five or six people they spend the most time with or something. Like
Mm.
we sort of build ourselves out of the way we are seen by other people in a non-narcissistic kind of way.
Mm.
We all information, you
You do
know,
have to adapt to others. I mean, it's.
exactly. Like it's just happening. It's happening all the time. And to the extent that you can acknowledge it, then your system is happier and healthier.
Mm.
And when you don't acknowledge it, like because it's happening anyway, if you don't acknowledge it, then there's some sort of a block in that flow of information where it's coming and going, but
Mm.
it's not reaching some part of you that is being solipsistic. And there will be friction there. That will be dukkha in the Buddhist language. There will be something there that is uncomfortable.
Mm.
And it's your choice whether you want to pave over that discomfort and retreat
Mm.
back further into solipsism, or
Mm.
you want to say, oh, this is hurting. Let me look at the pain and
Mm.
let me like resolve what the barrier, what the friction is here. Let me see if I can use my attention to do that. And that's sort of the gift of other people. The gift of sort of suffering other people as other than us and having things that they want that are different than us, but being able to kind of work through that.
Mm.
There's a mm, There's this spiritual teacher. I think I've mentioned him a few times. Thomas Hubel.
Mm,
I think he's from Austria, but he talks about the feedback loop between people of information of like
mm,
I'm feeling you, feeling me, and you're feeling me, feeling you, and there's this like
mm-hmm,
when you're relating to the person as a mystery in this non-solipsistic way, there's a flow of information that is flowing between the two of you
mm-hmm,
that you're conscious of.
mm,
And there's a vulnerability there because you're never quite sure what the other person is going to say, but you
mm,
have enough esteem in yourself that you're able to open to that and let that information flow without hiding yourself away or just being like, oh, they're just a jerk. I don't want to deal with them, or
mm,
or they just love me and that's great. And as long as they do that, everything's great. Like you're actually dealing with them as an unknown. Then the information can flow, and you're kind of feeding each other in that sense.
yeah.
Because then, yeah.
No, I think that's great. And that reminds me of earlier what we were talking about of sort of staying aware of the mystery of others' minds. And but yeah, being aware of the input, I guess you could say, that you're getting from them, their facial expression, their words, and what patterns that you're detecting that from previous things and everything. And I like that. And that seems to point to sort of dialogue, conversation with others as some kind of spiritual knowledge, part of the adventure and loveliness of life. And that sort of is a contrast, I think, to the sort of the stage or the basis of this conversation of the myth of Narcissus, where when he's pursued by Echo, he's away from his companions, enjoying the beautiful bloom of his youth in the exercise, in the hunt. He's like full of himself.
Hmm.
And he's enjoying the fullness of his own being. But then, yeah, when he gets that voice of Echo, he goes for it, but then when he sees her, he's repulsed and he repulses her. And then he goes and falls in love with the perfect, image of himself. And dialogue and openness and mystery it seems like kind of the opposite of all of that way of being.
Yeah, it's actually so it's I really love that you just like you brought it back into the core of story that we're working with because I'm like it sort of illuminates for me this the mirroring between Echo and Narcissus. The chapter in the book Bulfinch is Echo and Narcissus. It's not the
Yeah.
myth of Echo, the myth of Narcissus. It's the myth of Echo and Narcissus. And in Echo, you have somebody who like she's only able to like Echo respond to what the other person. So she's like
Mm,
she there's a oh man, I've lost my thread. But she's sort of lost she's lost something, the mystery of herself. She's lost herself as a source.
mm,
She can only source from other people. Whereas with Narcissus, like other people don't even exist to him. And
yeah.
he's only able to source like from within himself.
Yeah.
Um,
Were you going to bring that back to the attachment styles, the avoidant and the anxious?
I was thinking about that. Yeah. And what you were saying about Narcissus being full of himself, is I think and Echo being like emptied of herself.
Mm,
And the way the two sort of magnetize onto each other within this story.
mm.
Um, and yet
Magnetized and they're attracted and then repelled. Yeah.
yeah. And Narcissus is um he's got friends, and so he's not completely asocial, and he's engaging with Echo until he can see her, until she's
Yeah.
real, until she presents her need. When she stops purely echoing him, purely just presenting him with
Okay, that's great.
his
Yeah.
own words.
Yeah.
But she comes up and throws herself on him and is like, I
Yeah.
have needs. I'm real. As soon as they
Yeah.
touch or they're about to touch, he's like, oh no, get away from me.
That's right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
I think there's something really, really deep there of just
Yeah.
like as soon as the other becomes real, like that's what it is. As soon as the other becomes real, they become a mystery, they become something other than us. They stop perfectly reflecting our own self back to us.
Yeah.
Then we want to get rid of them.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you for elucidating that. And yeah, as I was saying that myth, I was wanting us to come back to it. Yeah, that's great. And that, yeah, the myth of Narcissus is elucidated by his interaction with Echo. Yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then the fullness of himself and her lack of fullness, but then her like I would almost wonder if I'm always doing this like alternative ending to the myth or the fairy tale or whatever, but like if Narcissus had been able to meet Echo in that moment and say yes to her and her otherness and her needs and her mystery and her just this thing that is not myself but that reflects myself, um whether that would have broken her curse, you know um, and saved him from his own curse as well. Saved him from falling down in that solipsistic hole that he kind of. I mean, he gets cursed by whatever goddess it is that I couldn't remember, but the goddess of vengeance curses him
Mm,
for because he is unable to acknowledge other people, and because enough of those people are hurt by him that one of them prays for vengeance, and the
right.
goddess says, "Yes, this is correct. This is correct, and he will suffer as he has made others suffer. And
Yeah,
that is what ends up fooling him into mistaking his reflection for something physical. And
yeah,
he wastes away. Um, so if he had been able to break out of himself enough to accept Echo as an other, he would not have fallen down into that particular thing. And then she would have been at least received. And, we don't have the sort of fairy tale thing of like, oh, when you kiss me, the curse will be released. But it has that kind of vibe to it. So
yeah. The Greek myths are more dark. They tend to go for the tragic part. There isn't the like in the Christian worldview with the folk tales that has this redemption at the end. Seems
yeah,
like that's maybe a Christian kind of uh, worldview influence, I wonder.
that's interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the what you reminded me of part of the Narcissus myth, the earlier part where he had always rejected the nymphs, which to me echoes. I keep wanting to use that word. Sorry, I try to restrain myself some, but it, it echoes the other myth of Orpheus, also kind of very attractive to women, but and Orpheus is interesting because he's also very skilled with music and everything. But anyway, there's this after, his wife dies and he's not able to retrieve her completely and he fails and then he rejects Dionysus and then he goes for Apollo and then he rejects the Maenads, the sort of nymph-like female deities that kind of are attracted to him and go for him. He won't touch them, and and to me this is a little bit like Narcissus rejecting the nymphs for which he later gets cursed and he gets kind of poetic justice put on him finally, but this makes me wonder about something I brought up earlier, which is perfection. And sort
Mm.
of, I wonder if I think to me, that's part of the myth, the perfection of the pool of water and everything. It's kind of unnatural. And it's interesting that Narcissus goes there and then instead of getting sustenance from the water, he ends up being preoccupied, obsessed with, bemu taken in by just the image of his reflection in that, and that this is after his earlier having rejected the nymphs. Maybe there's some kind of perfectionism to him where nothing is ever good enough, for him to
Hmm.
combine with, to take in, and to make himself a part of also. There's this sort of distance maybe of narcissism where I want the image, I want the praise, but I can never give myself to something completely. I can never take in anything. And this to me is also reminds me of the Platonic sort of maybe uh, antidote of dialogue, of conversation that reminds that, you're together in this and you lose yourself in it and you're going towards something higher. But anyway, a lot there. But yeah, what do you think of the perfectionism and narcissism?
Yeah, I think I hmm, it's so many things. The thing you're laying out of like the Orpheus and the Maenads and Narcissus and the nymphs, um, it it harkens back for me to our earlier discussion of like the other as a mystery and being able to accept that.
Mm,
And when you can't accept that, then there are consequences. And
mm,
we see that illustrated in the Orpheus myth with the Maenads tearing it apart. And we see that illustrated here with Narcissus being cursed by the goddess.
mm.
But in either case, it's like their unwillingness to join in with the dance of being human results in some kind of destruction, or
Yeah.
even the dance
Yeah.
of reality, like maybe not even being human, but just being able to enter into the world as the world is unknown, being able to like being unable to accept the other exactly as they are,
Yeah.
um, because of the perfectionism or because of the need for it to be something so accurate and correct and pure and true that
Yeah.
you can't let that in. You can't join with it until it's perfect or whatever. Um, that creates that barrier that will eventually destroy you because um, reality is a mystery. It is constantly changing. There are other people. That's what's actually happening. And to the extent that you are acting in a way that is maybe subconscious, but willfully ignorant of the other and
Mm.
what is going on there and what their needs are, um, you will be destroyed over time. Like because you're skewing yourself further and further and further away from what's actually happening,
Yeah.
by refusing to acknowledge it. And yeah, um, I also just want to throw a little bit at the end of this thing of you were talking about the pond and the kind of unnaturalness of it,
Mm.
the purity of it. Um, I had this sort of hit of like, oh, it kind of maps onto like maybe the Holy Grail myth or something. Like there's some sort of like inner realm of purity, um, the indwelling nature of the divine in our system, in our experience, that if we find ourselves in that place and we turn towards it, if we mistake it for our ego, we mistake it for ourself, we sort of lose. We're not able. I don't know how to word this, but it's the wrong relation. It's the wrong
Yeah.
way to relate
Yeah.
to the inner divinity. We
Yeah.
should be serving it. We should be something, we shouldn't say, "Oh, this is me and this is I'm
Yeah.
so great." And yeah, and for Narcissus to see this sort of like in Buddhism, they have like the original nature of mind, the perfect mind, the enlightened mind,
Hmm.
to have a glimpse of the enlightened mind and then only see yourself in it. Oh, this is me, this is mine. I try and grab it, I can't grab it, but I want it. Sort of leaves you stuck on this edge of like of never being healed by it, never being nourished by it. I had not really seen that before. I so this is like new connections in the moment. Um, they're not very clear, but there's something in there about like the need to make the perfect or the divine or the holy,
Yeah. Yeah.
be myself, be
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
that degrades it and sort of wastes you waste away because you're no longer
Yeah.
enlivened by it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um,
think that's brilliant. I think that brings together so much of this. And that also reminds me of both Vervaeke and Rousseau. And,
nice.
you know, Vervaeke talks a lot about our current state, the meaning crisis, and how the spirituality, I'm spiritual but not religious. So much of that kind of discourse, you end up making a religion of yourself.
Mm. Hmm.
And there's this, I think it's not read very much, but this part of Rousseau's Emile where I think it's subtitled something like the Confessions of the Savoyard Vicar, but I look at it as Rousseau's kind of taking the opportunity to talk about religion, which I think I mentioned to you had real consequences for him. He had to kind of flee countries and things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's kind of a dangerous thing to do in the West back then. Um, but yeah, I love this part where maybe I could read it sometime if I look up where it is. But anyway, he talks about how religion can so easily become this exclusive, distinguishing thing where and maybe Protestants will especially be have this danger because of the not having the intercessor of the church. It's kind of this personal relationship with Jesus.
Mm.
And Rousseau talks, he says something like, he's speaking in the mouth of someone like this, and he says, you know, I wanted God to have said things to me that he had not said to others, or if he had said them to others, to say them to me in a different way. And for me, this is very, very important that we know that religion can end up being something that you're sort of using to distinguish yourself from others. But, you know, and what better way to be distinguished by others and to have such a high type of full of yourself experience than to be the one God has chosen to, you know, to have this personal relationship like nobody else has.
Yeah, yeah, you are saved, right? The whole
Yeah.
saved versus unsaved story. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great, man. Jeez. Um, the only thing I have to sort of add in response is, and this sort of popped into my head when you were saying, spiritual but not religious. Like, what is religious? And this is, I think, I'm pretty sure I get this from Joseph Campbell, but it's religious is like religare is sort of the etymology of it. So ligare, ligament, linking, connecting.
Mm,
So it's ideally a religion is a way of reconnecting yourself as the religious person with the mystery
yeah.
that we've been talking about all along, in the sense of the mystery exists, whether it's as the other person or as the divine or whatever. It's a method of learning how to have yourself become that mystery. You're relinking yourself to the divine.
Yeah.
You are not linking the divine to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
think
yeah,
that's great. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's right. Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? I mean, we didn't talk much about social media and things,
Oh, right.
but I
Yeah,
think that's
yeah,
kind of that's very related.
yeah.
But I don't know. Do
Yeah.
you have observations or data or anything that you want to bring up?
Um, let's see. There's definitely a part of me that's like, ooh, that was such a good ending.
Yeah, we could go.
You
We
made this
could.
great point. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was a crescendo. I mean,
Yeah.
we could just save that for another time and bring in Jonathan Haidt or something. Height.
Height. Yeah, he probably, it's a better way to pronounce that guy's name. That's a rough name, dude. Yeah, I don't know that I have much to say about it. I mean, there, but I do kind of want to explore it, and I don't know that we're going to necessarily open up this conversational space around, narcissism and narcissus and all
Hmm.
this again. So I'm tempted to just kind of let it go, let us keep going, and if we end up nowhere and it's bad, you can just cut off. You can just cut
Okay.
off this.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah. I'll
end
edit
on the
it
other
out.
one. Yeah,
This will never
yeah.
have happened for others.
Yes, exactly. Or if you're watching this, hey, it turns out pretty good, so stay tuned. Uh, um, yeah, because so quick break, but let's see where this goes. Um, yeah, social media, narcissism, sense of self. It's interesting because I feel like we're really as a society or even as a race because it's pretty worldwide right now. The reality of social media and what it means seems schizophrenic or at least like multiple personality because like when the internet first came out, when Facebook first came out, or whatever social media first came out, it was very much like, oh, everyone has a space, everyone has a voice, you can curate, you can express yourself. It's this tool, it's this means of doing a thing that should be and was and is very beautiful. Like I remember the early days of Facebook or Instagram or whatever, like it's a joyful time. There's this wildness to it. There's this expression. Um, but over time, like it also, no, I'll stop talking in a second here. It also kind of solidifies into something that we think is real but isn't real. Like it divorces us from reality in a certain way that it's almost like an externalization of the ego process.
Hmm.
If we're using ego in sort of the negative sense of the word.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'll stop there and if you have
Yeah.
anything to say.
Hmm. Yeah. I don't. There's so many starting points and places to go. I guess one thing I think about it is that as many people point out, it's kind of unnatural in that, I'm like if you're just posting to social media or posting a video, you're speaking in real time for yourself, but not to others, and you're not hearing their reactions. And there's an unlimited almost number of anonymous people that you're speaking to. So that's just very unnatural. Like even if you're in a public space and you're speaking to a gathered crowd, you're feeling and seeing their reactions, and you're gathered there for a specific thing, and or there's culture around it and everything, right? I view that as more natural, but still more natural is to me just dialogue kind of back and forth. It's not so much when you have an audience and everything. So I guess that's one thing that I would say is I think it's kind of unnatural, and I would say maybe you could characterize a lot of the growth of social media as being because of the lack of naturalness to it. So,
Yeah, yeah. This does kind of interestingly tie back to the narcissism discussion because it is like there's like a disembodied nature to it.
mm,
There's you're entirely focused on image, on concept, on something concrete, presentation,
mm,
and you do get feedback, you do get comments, you do get likes, you do get shares of whatever platform you're on, however that works.
yeah,
But it's not immediate. It's not in the moment. It's not, you're no longer relating to a mystery, you're relating to a concept.
mm,
You create this concept, you put it out in the world, whether it's a
mm,
video, or whether it's in here's what I'm
Mm,
doing today, or it's an image or whatever, it becomes this concretized thing that then there are reactions to that thing, and you're separated from that by 1 degree, but you're
mm,
no longer being directly impacted.
mm,
Um, and when you are having a dialogue with someone or when you are speaking in front of a crowd, if you're speaking and everybody's going to sleep, you're getting that live. You're getting that in your face. They're the back and forth of it, the exchange of information is happening. And so if that embarrasses you and you start having a strong emotional reaction, you have to then manage that emotional reaction in front of that crowd.
mm.
Whereas if you post something on Facebook and you get a lot of bad feedback, one, nobody's going to see you freaking out about it unless you decide you want to start posting about it. And two, you can just delete it. So you're automatically like social media gives us this mimic of connection
Yeah.
that is curatable enough to the point where you're not risking
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And that seems like maybe where a lot of the danger comes from.
Yeah.
We lose if you don't risk, then you don't suffer. And if you don't suffer, you don't learn. And
Yeah.
that's not to say that we should be suffering all the time. Uh, definitely shouldn't. But life is suffering. You know, there is an element of life that is painful, and to the extent that we try to detach ourselves from that, the pain comes back around another way because we still
Mm,
there's something about being human and being alive that means pain is part of it and finding ways to integrate that and live joyfully and fully while acknowledging that pain is
mm,
I think part of what grows us as human beings or maybe what we're here to do or there's some level of necessity to
mm,
being able to accept that element of reality that foundational level of it. And so
mm,
when we try and separate ourselves as I'm pointing to with social media, like the pain will come around some other way and get us some other way. And, you know, maybe the anxiety, the depression, the sort of dopamine addiction that social media gets us into, like it's creating suffering in other ways. And then now we have to learn how to relate to that suffering.
yeah.
Because life will have its way with us, whether we want to or not, because we agreed to it before we got here, theoretically. Or
Yeah.
in any case, there's not really an opt-out clause. And nor
Yeah.
should there be. I don't think I
Yeah.
don't want to paint it that it's all suffering. I think um, something I learned from some people was you can't selectively numb. So if you numb yourself to the pain, you also numb yourself to the joy. But if you experience the pain when there is pain, then you can experience the joy when there's joy. And that's what makes life rich is the ups and the downs of it. And you
Mm,
know it's not going to last forever anyway, and you know it's always changing all the time anyway. So
mhm.
there you are, you're in the mystery of it.
Yeah.
And if you can dance joyfully in the mystery of it, then it's a pretty good life. So it's a pretty good way to spend your limited years here,
Hmm.
learning how to dance with the pain and the joy of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you were saying about the asynchronous nature of social media, where you post something and then you're not getting any reaction, but you're waiting for it, and Jonathan Haidt talks about that as part of the way that kind that kind of interaction for young people, for kids, is is part of the reason why they're not developing social skills and they're having anxiety around other people and everything, because that's how they interact. So I just wanted to point out that yeah, that's not good for development, and I don't think that's good for our development as adults either.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think that's interesting because I think I get this sense of like, oh, like so if you're sort of a chronically online person
Mm,
and you're used to that asynchronous thing, then when you're presented with something in real life, um, there would be this sort of deer in the headlights, kind of like, oh,
yeah.
I don't know how to have this social interaction. And it's interesting for me because, you know, back in high school or even prior to high school, so we're talking maybe computers were around, but not really the internet wasn't really a big thing to the degree that it, you know, social media and all of that. Like we didn't
Mm,
grow up predisposed in this way that you're talking about.
yeah.
I know I still had the same feeling of awkwardness of like, oh, I'm not quite sure. And I think that's, I was a nerdy kid. I was very bookish. I maybe had some stuff go on when I was 6 months old, and there's some trauma work I've been doing around all. So it may have been something particular to me,
Mm,
but I feel like I can relate to that concept, that image I'm crafting for myself in this moment of this chronically online person, deer in the headlights of real life, because
mm,
they're so used to the asynchronous nature of online life that I wonder at what does it mean that our entire global society is subjecting itself to this experiment all at the same time.
mm,
There's not a lot of control groups. There's not a lot of societies in the world right now, except maybe some, hunter-gatherer, maybe the Amish, I don't know,
mm.
that are apart from whatever is going to happen to us because of this.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like I have found my way back to a level of comfort in reality despite the social media. And I don't know, maybe there's hope for the youths as well. I mean, humanity is very resilient, and we have put ourselves through a lot of bad things in our history, and yet here we are still growing and thriving. So maybe we can get past this and find something a little more holistic, a little more in touch with that mystery, a little more able to handle the improvisational nature of
Mm,
reality,
yeah.
without needing to beat ourselves up for getting it wrong, or punish each other for getting it wrong.
Hmm.
Social sort of social reinforcement of perfectionism.
Hmm.
Um, I think if people are allowed to, because the reason we want that asynchronous thing is we want to be able to show up the way we're supposed to show up. There's an expectation of what we need to do to be acceptable.
Mm,
Um, and we can craft that more carefully in social media reality than we can in actual reality.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah, it's weird how people use the word brand for themselves now, your personal brand and stuff. To me, that it's not a good thing. You shouldn't be a brand.
yeah,
We should have less
yeah.
brands anyway. But
Yeah, I
that's
mean, what does it
my
even mean to be a
belief.
brand? Like, what does that mean for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're trying to, I mean, it's a little like narcissism, right? You're trying to craft the way others see you. They have this
Mm,
whole this image of you, and it's everything needs to be consistent, and it needs to be attractive. I mean, it seems like it's narcissism inducing,
yeah,
right?
that's interesting. Yeah, because the thing you're describing is very controlling. Like, I have to make sure that I present myself in such a way that I guarantee a certain response from people. Otherwise, I'm not safe. I'm not socially safe. I don't belong. And that would be narcissism inducing. That would be social reinforcement of narcissism.
Mm.
Um, but there's also an element of like, you should, and it's good to care about how you come across to others, in
Mm-hmm.
that, like, every time we do one of these podcasts, I throw on a collared shirt because I there's a way that, like, I feel I'm coming across a little more professional.
Mm-hmm.
I so there's the image. I'm sort of crafting my image in a way that, like, I think one time I showed up in a hoodie because it was cold. And like, it's fine, but that's the thing, right? So, like, I'm crafting this image. One, I feel like it presents myself in a certain way. Two, I feel in myself, oh, I feel a little more professional. I feel a little more put together. I've intentionally done this thing that makes me feel stronger, and that helps my energy present better. Like, so it's sort of a
Yeah.
self-supportive way. But and I think all of that is fine. The problem becomes, like, if I don't do it, or if I fail, or as soon as the presentation becomes more important than what it's being crafted
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
give rise to, then we're in trouble. because
Yeah.
then the living thing that's inside the presentation can wither. It can lose the support and the nourishment that it gets from engaging in the mystery and being energized by the mystery and the uncertainty of it all.
Yeah.
Um, and it dies and we die, and then we're stuck with this husk of a persona.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think in society, when you have other people, you want to kind of respect what they are, what you seem to be to them. You want to be somewhat washed and groomed, and yeah, I like uniforms in some way, because for people doing a job, because then you kind of know what their role is. Obviously you don't want that person to only have that in their life or something like that, that they think that they are that or something that's not healthy. But yeah, I think there's a happy medium, but you're managing a little bit the image you're putting out there. And part of that is it's not because you want this deep validation, but you're kind of respecting other people's, you're somewhat playing a role a little bit. And then you can go beyond that and be friendly and even become friends or meet people or whatever. But yeah, I think uh, yeah, isn't it mostly about just respect and that, for others in society? This is not my world where I can just do whatever I want to do. And um and that sort of makes me think about how there is almost a sort of fetishization, or maybe that's not the word, but a lot of online branding is kind of this authenticity look, where maybe I'm disheveled, or maybe I just say whatever I think, if I'm talking about world affairs, but I don't really know that much about them, but I kind of, you know, I don't know. I was thinking of like conspiracies and things in terms of where, I think you sort of asked where are we going with this, or I was thinking that from our discussion and internet culture and stuff. Yeah, I'm just yeah, I don't know what you want to say to that, but I'm a little pessimistic, or I don't know. Yeah, what are you
Mm.
thinking anything from what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm less pessimistic, and I think part of that comes from a belief that when things get to an extreme, they will often turn into their opposite.
Mm,
Sometimes you only know the good by having experienced the bad.
mm,
I mean, it's a bit of a Hail Mary pass at this point, but fingers crossed it works out. But I think there's something about human nature that these realms that we're talking about are so miserable. How are we going to be comfortable living in them? We're not really.
mm.
And when stress is put upon a system, the system will discover resources it didn't know it had.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a
So
good way of putting it.
thank you. Thank you. That's kind of my hope as far as the pessimism goes. But um, I think when it comes to like the happy medium, one of the things that we need is allowance and forgiveness and
Mm,
sort of an acceptance of our own mediocrity or
mm,
our own imperfection. Really, I won't say mediocrity because that implies sort of a bland middling. And I'm like, no,
mm,
sometimes we're great, sometimes we're terrible. Like we, ah, I think one of the faults in the internet thing that we're talking about, this sort of online society, social media thing, is like we've somehow developed a link between if we craft our brand correctly, we will be safe. We will
mm,
belong, we will be validated.
mm,
There's a there's a sourcing of some esteem there, some sort of validation of us
Mm,
that we don't actually need. Like
mm,
we've mistaken the image for for the source. How do I say this? And so the middle ground is the allowance of like, oh, like the image isn't necessary. The brand can slip, it can change. I don't, it's there to serve me as an expression, as a creation, an artistic thing.
mm,
Um, it's fun, it's enjoyable, like, but as soon as it solidifies into something that I have to maintain, or I lose my belonging, I lose my security, I lose my safety, then we're in trouble.
mm,
Whether we're talking about like some high school kid who, if they don't post the right thing on their whatever account, like they're going to get bullied, or
mm,
we're talking about somebody who's got several million followers on YouTube, and if suddenly something comes up and they say the wrong thing, then they lose all of their wealth and their status and their fame, and they're
mm,
canceled or whatever, you know.
mm,
Or people are just like, oh, they're dumb, they fucked up, they're boring now. Audience
mm,
capture, you know, you
mm,
sort of like
mm,
then you
yeah,
have to perform for your audience because so much of your identity and your safety and security is built around the response that you need to make sure you're getting.
yeah,
If we can find ways of returning to ourselves something internal, that sacred pool of the divine inside of ourselves, as the thing that we can rest and be nourished by instead of being nourished by all these external reflections,
mm,
um, but also not take that as a, ooh, now not be Narcissus and see our reflection in it and think that
yeah,
that's what the truth is. um, the more of us who I think can do that and find some kind of genuine esteem or fulfillment that will allow us to go on social sites and present in ways that aren't, you know, perfectly polished.
yeah,
Or we fail or we look dumb, but we're trying and we're having like that was why I think like YouTube and social media was so good when it first came out, was everybody was doing that. Everybody was playing, they were experimenting, they were trying, they were creating, and the consequences weren't big because, like, what the fuck was a YouTube? Nobody knew what it
mm,
was. It's just some kids messing around with video cameras. And
mm,
so, like, that was when it was fresh and new. And then as soon as it becomes something that you can harvest esteem from, then it starts solidifying into something toxic.
yeah,
And if we can take that step backward and find it in ourselves instead, and not be caught in the externals, then I think that's where, and as the externals become more and more miserable,
mm,
we're sourcing less and less good things from it. At some point, somebody's going to be like, wait a minute, no. And I don't mean one person, I mean like it will happen throughout. And
mm,
ideally, like they'll turn towards something. And in fact, I mean, there's a lot of people, I think Vervaeke for sure, and other people that talk about like, oh, why is there this sudden resurgence in traditional religions? Well,
yeah,
it's because all of the things that reflect us are no longer, are we're realizing don't nourish us. The places we're looking for meaning and belonging aren't feeding us. So
yeah,
people are looking elsewhere.
yeah,
And religion, you know, traditional religion is, if it's handled well, if it's handled the way it's meant to be, and not, you know, as with everything, it can become problematic. But going inside and realigning yourself with the divine as a way of feeling your own esteem and valuing yourself and having something to share in the world and having a purpose, having a meaning, having a any kind of joy or juiciness to your life, if it can come from within instead of being sourced from without, then you become a source. And you don't have to worry about it so much as long as you're allowed to make some mistakes, which religions aren't always the best at allowing you to do. But maybe we'll work on that bit. Yeah.
yeah. I agree on that last part, and I think sort of the Eastern religions are better at that, and I hope we can. And this is Rousseau's sort of religion too. He kind of goes through how his sort of good version of Christianity, and he says, by the way, don't be intolerant. Like that's kind of one of the key kind of things. Like as long as you're not intolerant, things can, and some other things can go very well. You just don't want to get to a place where we have this deep communal connection with the divine, but then oops, we need to kick out the Jews because they're running the banks and blah blah blah.
Yeah. 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 See, that's, yeah, that's the, the religare connection, the serving of the divine, the like,
Mm,
if you are genuinely connected to the divine and not just polishing a graven image of the
mm,
divine that you've created for yourself and you think is pretty great and you're like, yeah, this thing that I've created makes me great and I'm great because of this thing. But if you're like genuinely connected to the divine, you realize that like everybody is connected to the divine. Everybody has the divine inside themselves, and there is no specific thing that guarantees connection or that guarantees exile from the divine.
mm,
And you just like most of the mystics throughout human history, you want people to have that experience. You want to share it. You don't want to force them. Um, and maybe that's, that's where you get into some trouble, but
mm,
it's already there. They just have to turn to it and see it. And you want
mm,
that for them. You want to be the mouthpiece of the divine in the world in such a way that it leads people back to the divine in themselves.
mm. Yeah.
You don't want to force people to worship your particular image because that's narcissistic. That's, oh, if I can make you worship this God, then that proves this God is powerful and I'm on this God's team, so therefore I'm powerful. And so it's all ultimately just coming back to trying to make yourself powerful. And then you're sourcing your safety and your belonging on whether or not this external thing is seen as valuable or invaluable that you've
Mm,
identified with. You've put your identity in that and you're like,
mm,
okay, that's whereas if you genuinely have some sort of relationship with the divine, you're taken care of and you don't have to, there's no need to force that on anyone else.
mm,
They will come to it in whatever way they can in their own terms. And if you're interested in it, you can try to help them. I'm thinking a lot of some of the Sufi poets, Rumi and Hafiz, have a lot of their work is about, I think there's a Hafiz poem of like, I spend my nights scattering keys throughout the jail, throughout the prisoners to help them open their cell doors, even though like there's no doors on their cell, or I forget his whole metaphor, but
mm,
it's that kind of thing. Yeah, I just think if you're trying to convert people, you already missed the boat.
mm. I guess you could look at conversion as maybe a soft thing of trying to just give them a key. But yeah, I guess conversion can be seen as like a sort of force thing or something. Yeah, but either way, I think, yeah, spreading some sort of wisdom or way of connection to the divine is can be good, and sort of like spreading keys, spiritual keys to them. But yeah, anything more forced, it seems like that's the that's a bad path.
Yeah, it's like if you're not able to make enough of a prayer out of your own life, enough of a relationship to the divine out of your own life, that people are inspired to do the same thing for themselves, and
Mm,
instead you have to use force in some way, that's not that's not going to work. You're not even ultimately converting them. You're just using violence to make them believe, say what you want them to say, to prop up your own sense of superiority. And to the extent that they play act an agreement or they identify with an agreement out of fear, that creates wounds, that creates sort of an energetic backlog. Um, I'm getting
yeah.
way out there now, so I'll stop.
Well, I do think, yeah, maybe the or one of the most powerful ways to teach is by example. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we learned so much more that way, and there isn't the ego involved when the other person is telling us to do something or be some way, and then there's this sense of, okay, am I like obeying them and putting them in a superior position? But yeah, if you live by example, there isn't that ego part, and also they're by definition sacrificing and their offering, uh, because they're not just telling others, but they're doing it themselves. So they're yeah. So I agree with that.
Yeah. 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 I like that. I like that the sacrificing offering element of it, sort of like your life becomes both your life is offered to the divine to kind of shine through, but then your life is offered to other people as well. And it's kind of it's a really interesting double like a double-edged offering. It's kind of going both ways. That's really beautiful. Yeah.
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 Well, sounds like a good way to end it. I think we'll maybe return to this image of Narcissus that we and the pool that we unpacked. I really like that. I think there's a lot there. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe next week we'll find some other folktale and go from
We'll
there.
see how it goes. Actually, yeah, we'll have to talk about that because I think I'm traveling next week, but we'll figure something
Okay.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks for talking today. It was really great.
Yeah. My pleasure. As always.